Hello and welcome to another edition of 310 to Left, the fastest moving train in baseball. I'm Tom Caron from Nesson. He is Alex Spear of the Boston Globe, and together we have covered the Red Sox for many, many years. 210 years in dog years, if dogs were to cover the Red Sox, but that is not the case. Alex, how are you, my friend?
I'm great, even if I'm feeling long in the tooth thanks to that introduction. So thanks. Nice way of starting things off, Tom.
Yes, the canines, to be specific. The Red Sox are they continue to roll on as their 500 ways. Yeah, we have the great Hall of Fame now hockey writer Kevin DuPont used to call the Hartford Whalers the Forever 500s. I am adopting his name for this Red Sox team, and it has led to such an interesting conversation of glass half full, glass half empty, underperforming, overperforming. Really, where you look at this team depends on what your expectations were for this team, right? If you thought this team was a playoff team, and narrator says no one did, but if you did, then it's an underperforming team, right? But if you thought this team was going to have to overachieve to make the playoffs, the fact that they are hovering around 500 and therefore hovering around the playoff race has to be considered an okay way to survive through a third of the season, right?
Yeah, and I guess the other part of the question of whether or not they're overperforming or underperforming is, did you adjust those expectations when everyone started getting injured? Because I think that no matter how you viewed them entering the season, if you thought that they could surprise, particularly with upgrades to the pitching staff, I have a hard time believing that anyone had that rosy an outlook once you had the upper half of the lineup all being on the injured list seemingly at the same time, in addition to Giolito being lost in spring training. So, I think that what we've seen is a team that fights like crazy, right? Like they play hard. They're covered in dirt all the time. They play fast. They don't necessarily have. It's not just rolling out a kind of jaw-dropping amount of talent. This is not the Atlanta lineup. This is not the Phillies lineup. This is hard-nosed efforts to win through really good pitching and trying to execute in different phases of the game, needing high levels of execution defensively, pitching wise, and doing little things offensively in order to win. But they've done that as often as they've lost, which is pretty impressive. But there's also that question of degree of difficulty, who they're beating and who they're not.
Yeah, I'm a soccer fan, as you know, and they play to a draw in soccer, right? You finish with a tie, and there are good draws and bad draws, and I feel that's the way it is with this 500 thing, right? When you split four games in Chicago, you're meh, eh. This is such a disappointing 500 record. And then when you rally to win the second game against the Phillies from a 4-0 deficit and the bats come to life and David Hamilton has a game, you say, oh, now that's a 500 team I can buy into. It's been an interesting couple of weeks as they hover always within two games, right? Never more than two above or below 500. But how they get to that equilibrium every other day is very different depending on how they got there.
It is right, and right the temperature check of it's interesting, like an interesting psychological experiment, right? Like one game under and one game over 500 doesn't look very different. It's like statistically speaking, it's just noise, and yet we will. I feel like they feel very different depending on which side of that line they're on, and probably everyone who's examining them does as well. But you're also right that the question of execution and what they look like in the wins and losses matters a lot. And that's part of the reason I think why the losses make it feel like they are, just too inexperienced, because a lot of them have included unearned runs, right? Like their record is 3-20 through at least through Tuesday's game when they'd given up at least one unearned run this year. So then it's like, oh, too young, too many acts of self-sabotage, which is fair, right? But there are other times when you see young players taking these steps forward that give you a glimpse that, oh, they might be capable of a little bit more than we expected their performance level to be at this point. And that's particularly true with whether it's a Duran or a David Hamilton, who I think has been one of the biggest midseason surprises imaginable, because it did not feel like he was going to have a sustained role on the team. And to the contrary, he's kind of been able to flourish.
when you look at this team's hopes and expectations, and you look at the playoff projections, I haven't checked in a couple of days, but Fangraphs had them around 12, 13%, lower than the two teams behind them in the American League East, right? They had the lowest playoff expectations of any team in the American League East. And I know every team has their own analytics group and will come up with their own projections, but that's essentially what they will follow to see if they should add or subtract. On the show this week, Craig Breslow said you got to pick a lane. We know Chaim Bloom tried to sort of thread the needle and do both, stay competitive while selling off some pieces. Didn't really work either year. What's it going to take for this team to get Craig Breslow, Sam Kennedy, and ownership on board to add to this team in July rather than subtract?
It is a great question. The whole picking a lane thing is a fascinating metaphor, right? Like if you drive on those dotted lines, then you can get hit from either side. So that's no good. It is interesting. They do seem determined to pick a direction, which does represent a bit of a departure and maybe a very intentional one on the part of the organization after what had been two confusing trade deadlines in the last 2 years. I think that in order to convince them, it's going to take a run. Like, simple as that, right? Like, I think that 500 probably won't get it done in terms of convincing them that it's a team that's in contention. It's going to require a bit of a surge where you hear Alex Cora talking about winning, 6 out of 7 or 7 in a row, something like that. And we've seen the Red Sox react to that in the past. For instance, in 2019, when Dave Dombrowski was the president of baseball operations, they were thinking about selling at the deadline in July. They ended up winning 6 of 7 against the Yankees and the Rays. And as a result of that, they pulled off the table the idea of trading Mookie Betts in the middle of that season, pulled off the table the idea of trading really any veterans and kind of held pat. So it is a very, very interesting sign where there's this massively inflated importance to those individual wins and losses, but the 1 forward, 1 back, 1 forward, 1 back, that's probably going to result in a sell if that's where they stay.
All right. The aforementioned Dave Dombrowski was in town this week with the Phillies. Unfortunately, Cody Clemens was not. Son of Roger Clemens was on the injured list. We'd really been hitting the ball well, was barreling everything. If you talk to people in Philadelphia, but he had the back spasms, placed on the injured list June 3rd. So we had to get the next best available Clemens. We'll settle for Roger Clemens, the 7-time Cy Young Award winner, 24-year Major League career, and as we all know, struck out 20 batters in a game, not once, but twice as a member of the Red Sox. Lots to talk about with the Rocket. Let's get right to it. Roger Clemens, Red Sox legend, the guest on this edition of 310 to Left. So cool to be joined by the Rocket, Roger Clemens. He's in town from time to time, but I want to get this out of the way first, Rocket. You're in town next week. At the end of the week, we've got the golf tournament up in Maine, the Drive 4 Kids. You were part of it last year. It's kind of a mini. I explain it to people as a mini Tahoe, right? The thing that happens in Tahoe every year. They kind of brought one to the East Coast. You're one of the guys coming back next year. I'm playing in it this year. I'm not just doing the announcing.
Wow.
I'm in deep.
Wow.
I'm in
I love
trouble.
that.
All right. I am the worst celebrity and the worst golfer in the field. Okay. So, but Roger, what's bringing you back? I know you had a great time last year. Why'd you want to come back and do it again this year?
Well, Tommy, I love the game of golf. I tell people I probably met more business opportunities through the game of golf than my 24 years in the majors. And I had a golf tournament myself for 15 years in Houston and for my foundation. And this one, the Drive for Kids, I get it because, again, my foundation, we deal with at-risk children. So it's really cool. I'm excited. I'm doing a clinic, I believe, on Thursday morning. So I'm gonna have to get the arm cranked up a little bit, and then of course I'm close to the Bush family. Being at home in Houston, 41, I was probably closer to 41 than 43. 41 would come to the house, especially if I had a handful of ball players or whatever over, and got a horseshoe pit in my backyard because of him. But Barbara was great too. She was always funny. She played speed golf also, and but anyway, it's benefiting the Barbara Bush Foundation also. So it's a great cause. The golf course is awesome. The people are great. And I guess you and I are going to have to get paired up together and tee it up because, as you know, we look like stars on the range. It's like watching batting practice. You see a lot of stars in batting practice, and then the lights come on about 7 o'clock or 7:30, whatever the game time is, and man, you just got to manage your misses. I remember one of my favorite, I think, quotes that I heard a while back was, I think Ted Williams and Jack Nicklaus, the great Jack Nicklaus, were arguing about what's more difficult. And I think Ted made the comment, I have to use a round bat, hit a round ball traveling at 95 miles an hour. And Jack goes, well, that's true. He goes, but the only difference is, Ted, I have to hit my foul balls. You don't. And we can hit some foul balls out there on the golf course. That's for sure.
No doubt about that. If you're standing, when I'm up on the box, if you're standing on the right, move over to the left. That's all I'm saying, because I'm going to push everything right. I want to ask you about one moment last year that was really cool. Patrick Dempsey, McDreamy, the actor, was playing near you, and there you guys were held up. I was over there watching it, and somebody pulls out a glove and a ball and a bat, and you wind up throwing to Patrick Dempsey, who I talked to. We had on this show last month, and he still talks about it like one of the coolest things that's happened. And this guy drives in the 24 hours of Le Mans. Like, this guy's a race car guy, an actor, but batting against Roger Clemens goes down as one of the highlights of his life, because he's a kid from Maine who loved the Red Sox. And I was just thinking about you, Roger, and you were at the Country Music Awards, and you had that really, really special moment for Toby Keith with the Red Cups. Like, you have gotten to touch so many lives, right? It all begins with baseball, but for you in your life now, being able to travel and do all the things, what does it mean to you to be able to sort of impact lives, to connect with people? Because I really feel like you have spent your retirement from baseball doing just that.
Well, you're dead on, Pards. I mean, gosh, where do I start? You got my heart going a little bit. I'll just jump right to Big Dog Daddy Toby Keith. I mean, he was a true friend. We all miss him dearly. Toby was himself when he was playing and just starting and broke in what should have been a cowboy. Just started in little honky tonk bars in front of 10, 20 people, all the way to when he was a mega star. So it was tough. They asked me, I got to speak at his funeral. That was a little difficult. And as you saw in the music awards, I was trying to keep it together as best I could. It was very difficult when I looked over because his kids were there. And Trish, his wife, was back in Oklahoma. She didn't want to get out in public just yet. She was not ready for that. So I knew when I looked into the camera, I was speaking directly to her. And that was tough on me. And so, but I miss him. He was a golfing buddy, funny songs, Red Solo Cup. He wrote a song about my wife and his wife, Trish, every time they go to the golf course. And he wrote it in like 20 minutes. It was called Pro Shop Junkies, and where they would go into the pro shop and, just shop away while we're trying to get to the first tee. But at the main event last year, throwing batting practice, a couple guys had somebody had a bat and a couple balls and gloves. So I played catch with a few fans, and I said, let's go. And we got on that tee box, and thank goodness my control was good. So I told him, if I get a little wild, we have plenty of ice. Ice always works. It only stings for a minute. So we had a good time. But as you guys know, saw me behind that, glove out there on the mound locked in. I had pride in the city that I was playing for. That was instilled in me by my mother and my grandmother, their work ethics. Like I said, I think my grandmother said it best. If you're going to become a ditch digger, be the best damn ditch digger in the country. And so that's what I do. And I was out there and I loved it. Obviously did not like it when I did not perform well, when all the fans are coming from everywhere to watch you work. But after the fact, it was, I enjoyed busting guys up in the clubhouse, keeping them on the same page, getting after it. And last 15 years plus, probably doing my DJ at night. I'm DJ No Request at night. I tell people I'm Rocket to most people. Now with the two twin grand boys, they're 7 years old. I'm Poppy Rocket, and then I do my DJing stuff at night. And we love music, obviously, and that goes all the way back to Toby. I mean, Big Dog Daddy left us with some great singing and drinking songs. That's for sure.
Roger, it's so interesting to think about the fact that you have, you're coming up for New England charity events. You've done so many of them, throwing batting practice on the field at Fenway in support of the Jimmy Fund, among
Yeah.
many other undertakings. I am curious, I did not grow up in New England. I was a transplant to the area, came here, I got to college while you were in your last couple of years with the Red Sox, and then was here for your post Red Sox career, right? Like when you
Yeah.
came back to Fenway as the villain for many years, and the dynamics were super interesting, and sometimes they were very loving. I remember vividly like seeing people in tears when you walked off the mound for what we thought was your final time in 2003 when you were supposed to be retiring and then didn't and kept on coming
Yeah.
back. Um,
Anybody can retire once. Anybody, that's
well, it's really interesting though to me that like you are once again, kind of I feel like beloved in most parts of New England
yeah.
and Fenway. How much at home do you feel at Fenway again? And are you surprised that you were able to kind of rebuild the roots that you had into
Yeah.
this ballpark that was formative for you?
Yeah, great question. I mean, it was. I never left. I mean, really, I never left. Of course, I would have. Thank goodness for the twilight of my career. Right. It was a long twilight. It was a
The
long
longest
twilight.
twilight ever. Yeah, right.
I got to experience a lot of cool stuff. Continuing on, I really was. Steve August. Augie was like the assistant GM. I think was traveling secretary, and he would be my running mate. He was great, great long distance runner. So our 2, 3, 4 miles around the commons out there. We talked about the last. I was going to sign like a 4-year deal that would have got me to the year 2000 and probably call it a day there. Maybe get into coaching or doing something with the team. But the general manager didn't want anything to do with it. And like I think back then they said you don't give a 31 or 32-year-old pitcher a 2 or 3 year contract. And I said, yeah, you're right. Now you give them a 10-year contract. And uh, so I mean, I remember talking to Greg Maddox out at the Tahoe event, and he's like just shaking his head. He said, "Rock, they couldn't afford us right now." And I said, "Doggy, you only have to go 4 innings. You wouldn't have to even ice. I mean, this is great. You still throw 100 pitches, but you only go 4 innings." So, but yeah, no. Coming out of the University of Texas and being drafted by the Red Sox, what a dream! I knew a little bit about the history, but it was cool because my mom wrote me a really cool poem about Fenway Park. And then when I got here, it was once I got my feet in the dirt and established, wanted to make a living, be able to change the course of my family and my extended family's life. Then it was right back focused on winning championships. And then we get to the World Series in '86, and I'm like, yeah, this is what I'm talking about. Playing when everything's so meaningful. And just how cool it was. I just remember telling my brothers and sisters, they're like, what is it like there? And I said, people come straight from work, take off their jackets and ties and get a dog and a beer. And here we go, man. They're on top of you in this cool little stadium. Had to learn how to pitch inside at Fenway. I was leaving balls over the middle of the plate to guys like Luzinski and Don Baylor and Dave Kingman. And when you do that, you don't get them back. They go a long way the other way over that green monster. So I was able to learn very rapidly how to make a 17-inch plate, a 24-inch plate. But to your point, even when I was a Yankee, everybody's like, "Oh, he went to." I said, "No, I actually stopped in Toronto for 2 years." I don't know if anybody remembers it. All these other guys that were Red Sox that went directly to the Yankees. That's how it went. But it was when you're on the. I get it. When you're in a Red Sox uniform, the Yankee people don't like you. But when you go to dinner or out on the street, they're the first ones to come up and ask you for an autograph. Unless a couple guys have been really drunk, where it would have got ugly or something stupid. Very rarely, I think, in my entire career has that happened. They see you out of your uniform in your street clothes, and it's pretty good. But I tell people all the time. I mean, pitching in, I was very fortunate. I got to pitch in two of the most historic ballparks. Old Yankee, I mean, New Yankee Stadium's nice. Is not even close to Old Yankee Stadium, not even close. And
Not
then
remotely.
the change, yeah, and then the changes they made to Fenway. Every time I come back to Fenway and see the guys. like you said, the work I do at the Jimmy Fund, I love it. They help out my foundation. What a treat it is for me to get back on that mound out there and throw what I call room service to those guys. And they get a hit at Fenway Park. I mean, I make them nervous because I walk up halfway through and I go, "Do you guys realize you're standing right where Ted Williams and Yaz stood and Babe Ruth?" And they're like freaking out. So that part out, that's fun. I always tell people though, you don't realize it. One of the probably I think the toughest place is South Side of Chicago. When I went over there to pitch, regardless if I was a Yankee or a Red Sox, there's you roll into the bullpen. There's 12 college football players that have been drinking all day, and as soon as I come through that door in the bullpen, it's like, Rocket, we're gonna kick your butt. You suck, and all that. I mean, they're going, they're just wearing me out. And the only peace and quiet I get is right when they're saying we're going to kick your butt today, Rocket. And ladies and gentlemen, boys, we rise for. Oh, say, okay, they got to stop. They got to stop. So I get 2 minutes of peace and quiet, and then as soon as the home of the brave, you stink, and we're gonna. So, but that's the cool things about the playing. That's when I get on some of my golfer buddies that the caddy has to hush everybody perfectly quiet. And I said, "Hey, come watch me warm up one time in an opposing ballpark. You guys want it to be quiet."
I obviously you had the opportunity to pitch in with the Blue Jays and the Yankees, and then Houston, and then back with the Yankees. There had been a time in 2007, that last unretirement. Again, to your credit, that you had the option of retiring and unretiring many times, where you were talking with the Red Sox. In the Yankees that summer, right? Like that last summer in 2007. Did you come close to coming back to the Red Sox at that point? And if so, like when you watched the Red Sox win the World Series that year, that was their second title, obviously, in that run. Mm-hmm. Was there a part of you that October that was like, dang it, made the wrong choice?
Not really, because I think when the Red Sox came calling is when after I finished in Toronto. So I get to Toronto, and I'm doing very well. I have a great 97, and I think midway through 98, Mel Queenie, my pitching coach, and the reason why I hit it off with Paul Beeston was awesome when he came down. Once I realized that I wasn't going to get an offer from the Red Sox, we actually flew home from Hawaii. My agents called me and said, "You need to get back to Houston. We need to talk." And it was almost laughable. And my agents were like, "What?" He hit me with like Cleveland, New York, Toronto, and there was another one involved in the numbers and the years and the length of the contract. And I just kind of sarcastically laugh, and they go, "What's so friggin' funny?" And I go, "Well, a team that I just worked my tail off for 13 years, even though my win-losses weren't great my last couple of years, I was in the top, I think, 5 in all the pitching categories. My second to last start, I timed my 20 strikeout game mark. And I looked at him. I said, I can't get an offer from a team that I love and that I was drafted by, and I worked my tail off. But I've got all these offers. It was unbelievable. So, but anyway, Beeston flew into Houston, Paul Beeston, and Beastie and I hit it off. And he wanted to rebuild the Blue Jays. I tell people when I was with the Red Sox, 80s, mid 80s, late 80s, early 90s, the Yankees really weren't our rival. They sucked. I mean, they had Donnie Ballgame. Yeah, they had some other great players, but Donnie Ballgame was their star guy. And the Blue Jays were, the team that we were going after. Now, once I went to New York, and then Red Sox changed ownership, it got competitive again. It didn't get ugly we had a couple crazy games, of course, out there, but it didn't get, it wasn't like when you I think like 75, 76, you see guys bashing into home and we're running guys over and sliding into second base, running guys over at second base and stuff like that. But anyway, Beeston left and went to the league office, and that kind of changed the dynamics of my contract. And as I was really going off, it kind of threw me back. After I warmed up, we were walking underneath the stadium in the Sky Dome, and Queenie said, "Listen, we're coming up on the trade deadline. You might want to, visit about that. You're doing great for us, but we're going to go young, and it doesn't look like we're going to try and win right now." So it kind of threw me off a little bit. And then when he hit me again with it 2 starts later, that's when I called my agent and said, "Hey, it sounds like they're going young. They're not going to be competitive." And that's when the wheels started turning. Then nothing happened. That off season is when the Sox started. We all started talking. And really, I think the only guy I really knew was on the team was I think Nomar was still there. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
100% sure on that, but so that's kind of how that happened. Steinbrenner came calling again. He came all the way down to Houston, and as soon as he walked through my door, he goes, "I've been trying to get your bleep 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 for a number of years now. Do you want to be a Yankee or don't you?" And so we went upstairs and had a long visit, and it was great to visit with him. Um, Obviously, go to New York, do all that, retire. Um, Andy Pettit signs with Houston, makes a comment that I think an offhand comment, joking around that, yeah, he'll talk to me. Yeah, because they said, hey, can you talk to Rocket about it? Yeah, I'll talk to him. At the same time, these new white Hummers came out, the really cool ones. And my wife wanted a white Hummer. And I'm good. I'm retired. This is going to be fun. I get to relax. No more ice in the shoulder. And the crazy radio station guys at home that I do, a rock and roll station I do stuff with, uh, they buy this Hummer and send and put it in the front gate and just directly call Deb and say, this is yours if he's on the mound here in April. And she goes, guess what? You're coming out of retirement. You're playing. I go, really? So that's how that happened. Retire again after, I don't know, a couple of years with the hometown team, which was a blast, getting there and getting Bagwell and Biggio to the series. But yeah, the last time was crazy. It was just the Yankees. I was actually in my garage working. Deb answers the phone. I saw the Yankees get swept. I don't know, it was Cleveland or somewhere. And the phone rings. Deb comes out in the garage. She goes, Joe Torre and Brian Cashman are on the phone. And I was like, the game just ended in Cleveland. I just saw him get. She goes, I know they're on the phone. So as soon as I pick up the phone, the skipper said, Rocket, how you doing? I go, hey, Skip, how you doing? And then Cashman, dry as ever, says, how long will it take you to get ready? And I go, Cash, I'm 45 years old. He said, well, I need you in my fourth or fifth spot on the mound, but I need you in the locker room too to get everybody on the same page so we can get in the playoffs. And so that's when the craziness started. I said, I'm going to have to call you in 10 days. And I took off we have a park there called Memorial Park. It's got a 3-mile running track on it where I do intervals and in the off season or getting ready for spring training. And so I just wanted to make sure my legs, but yeah, it was crazy. It was, I was worried about, again, when you're 45 years old, you're worried about a number of things, how your body's going to react and feel. But that's kind of how everything worked out.
Roger, you don't last 24 years without becoming a mentor to young guys while you're still playing. And you fast forward to where the game is now. And you mentioned a couple minutes ago talking with Smoltz, and you were talking to us before we came on. It used to be 5 and dive was a bad thing, right? Now you're happy you get 5 out of a guy, right? You get 5 innings. That's almost a quality start in today's baseball. Yeah. What do you say? I mean, you can't put the genie back in the bottle, right? You can't just tomorrow say, you guys got to start going 7 innings. But what do you say to pitchers now? Young guys, young pros, minor leaguers, maybe guys you talked to when you're around Cody on his teams. What do you say to young pitchers now about trying to go a little deeper, trying to maximize? Like you said, they're going to throw their 100, but how do you get 5 or 6 out of that 100 instead of 3 2/3 or 4? What do you say to those guys?
Well, it's something I think, like you said, starts in the minor leagues. And I was getting on a few of the guys in spring training because they would throw their 3 innings and they would go inside into the fitness room and get on a bicycle for 8 minutes. And that's, for me, what kept my shoulder. And even if I had a little heavy shoulder, I needed to get some blood through that body. We were doing 2 miles in under 15 minutes or under for 2 miles, 3 miles, 21 minutes or under. And when you run your first mile fairly slow, you really get after the next 2 miles. I mean, and it flushed your body out. And that's just the way, when I watched Tom Seaver and Nolan Ryan and guys like that running poles in the heat in the outfield. I was able to play 24 years because of my distance running, my core work in between starts. I was probably doing close to 320 abs in between starts. And long toss. Why these kids are chasing velo all the time and they're throwing these mush balls into walls from 5 feet as hard as they can, and it reads 97 and they top out and they go crazy. I just hit 97. But I tell them that obviously velocity, as you guys know, you've heard it, and it holds true. I mean, velocity is really the last thing. It's great that if you throw 95, But pitching is like buying property, location, 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 right? And a little movement. Again, when I talk to somebody like Pedro, Pedro was a little in stature. He had a good fastball, but he had movement. And it's similar to when I talk about Nolan Ryan. When Nolan had all those no hitters, it wasn't because he was throwing 98 miles an hour. He had that Bugs Bunny curveball going. And he had, I'd like to see the spin rate these days on Nolan Ryan curveball. And same thing with Pedro that made him dangerous was he had a changeup that he could throw anytime. And that's what I tell the young hitters, even my sons. I said, you've seen everything. You've seen 100-mile-an-hour fastballs. You've seen sinkers at 97. You've seen wipeout sliders. I said, the only thing you're going to see when you get to the big leagues is a number one or number two on a staff. He's going to have a changeup or a split that he can throw at any time, anywhere in the zone that he wants. And that's the only thing that's going to, to affect you, that these guys can get behind in the count and throw these pitches. The ones that can't get beat around. I said, but you make your living off the number 3, 4, and 5 starter. You're 1 and 2. If you get 1 or 2 hits off me or Pedro, you're ahead of the game. So going all the way back to, it wasn't too long ago, Charles Barkley and John Smoltz and I were in Birmingham, and we gave Dr. James Andrews a Lifetime Achievement Award. And at that time, Doc was saying that he's never done more surgery, Tommy John surgeries on 15-year-olds than ever. And again, I just try and encourage the guys to get out and hit the pavement when they're done running, when they can. Obviously, when you get to All-Star break and you get to 40 years old, like a Verlander, you're going to taper your stuff. I got into a swimming pool more often than I did hitting the pavement in July and August in the heat. And but it's, long toss is, for me, it's a way to keep, it's not the crazy long toss. It's just a good long toss program that you do in between starts. And yeah, I mean, I talk to the kids. One of my biggest deals was when I tell them, when I got to the 7th inning and Bill Fisher or Mel Stoudemire, any of my pitching coaches, Jim Hickey, they would hear me grunting in the 7th. They knew I was getting to the end of my rope, if you will. And when I would come in the dugout, they were like, where we at? And I go, all right, let's do our little deal where you let me start eating outs. So now I go back out to warm up in the 8th. I know that if this guy gets on, I'm out of there. Walk, hit, whatever. So my 8 warm-up pitches are a little more intense. Now I get an out, get a fly ball, get a ground ball. Now I'm that much closer to the best reliever in the history of the game coming in to shut the game down for me. So I'm trying to eat out, so I have incentives to do that. And April, May in Boston, New York, September, October, Boston, New York, the weather's cool. That's a blessing for any type of power pitcher. And my legs never got tired. And even at 42, 43 years of age, my legs were underneath me. And those are your bread and butter. So I'll tell you this, guys. Is it Mason? Who's the reliever for Oakland right
Mason
now?
Miller. Mason Miller.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Watch this kid. I don't know if they're going to trade him for 5 guys or whatever. It's probably the best arm I've seen in the last 20 years. This guy's mechanics are unbelievable. He throws 102, 103. Looks like he could throw to 108. And he doesn't fall off to the, first base side when he whips it in there with his legs. He kind of goes, his directional is really good. Wipeout slider. Yeah, he throws 100, but his mechanics are just perfect. I mean, if anybody wants to watch video and get out of this chase and velocity stuff, look at his mechanics. Even if you tap out at 92 miles an hour, anything 90 or above, you're a power pitcher. And that's what I try and tell guys. We pitch. I was afforded the luxury in Boston. It was a huge blessing. We traded for Tom Seaver. For me, the ultimate power pitcher. I'm watching a 40-year-old man out there. I don't know what my age is, 23, 24, 25, whatever it was. And I'm watching Seaver out there. Tom Terrific's out there on the mound, and he's grunting in there. He's 88, 89 miles an hour maybe. Next thing you know, he gets second and third. Boom, 93, punch out. 94 on the other corner, punch out. I go, okay. I see what's going on. And so I was, like I said, even when I don't have my best stuff, my plus fastball, you're a power pitcher. You know how to you can get outs. So
Well,
that's
that's really
again,
interesting. That's super interesting that you raised that, because like one of the things that I've been fascinated with, like the prototypical power pitchers, whether you, Verlander, others, Seaver, there was this notion that you would kind of work at one level during the game, right? Like as you begin the game, you're coming out like, let's say, low 90s, mid 90s, and then you're saving something when you're emptying the tank. That was your phrase, emptying the tank, when you would get into the late innings, so that you would, when you're talking about third, fourth times through the order, that changes the look when all of a sudden you are throwing harder instead of losing velo as the game gets along. So, but that kind of raises a question that I'm interested in, which is, as the game has evolved, like you're seeing more max effort from pitch 1 to pitch 85 or 100, wherever the finish line is for guys now. You can chuckle if you want. So
I
is the
am. I'm
issue
just.
with, yeah, we're at the 50th anniversary of Nolan Ryan throwing 235 pitches against Louis Tiam. Is your concern with, do you think that injuries in the game are a reflection of max effort every pitch? Do you think it's spin? What do you think is leading to the? Is it lack of leg work? What do you think is driving the wealth of injuries that we see in the game at this point?
I think you touched on it all. I think it's your lower half guys, their leg work. When we talked about their conditioning, when you're chasing velocity that hard, you really have to concentrate on the pitcher's throwing program deals. I carry 3-pound cuff weights with me to play in the main golf event next week. I do them every day. I'm always worried about having a frozen shoulder. I'm still able to throw batting practice from 50 feet to give the guys a real look. Uh, like I said, Dr. Andrews giving me a checkup every 5 years on my body and my shoulder to make sure. And he said there's a direct reason, because you're so religious with he goes, I see a lot of guys, obviously younger than I am, and they pitched in the big leagues and they cannot move their shoulder. They just, because they stopped moving. I think the again, I mean, guys are throwing so hard. I tease the relievers. I get it with the relievers. The relievers are coming in for 3 outs, possibly 20 pitches. Some of them, their mechanics look like a blender with the lid off of it. And, they're just coming at you with elbows and backsides and legs and knees. And so I get it. Those guys are going to, but if they start chasing velocity, like I said, you start missing in the middle of the plate. Guys in the big leagues can put wood on a bullet. They love that gas. And if you miss in the middle, you're in trouble. So you still got to pitch a little bit, but, I don't know if a lot of guys don't ice anymore. I tell them, when you're icing your elbow, it's only about 8 minutes, because you got that nerve there. Your shoulder, you can ice for longer. And, but it always got inflammation out of my elbow and shoulder to get me ready for 4 days later or whatever it might have been. So, we talk about a lot of things with those guys. I come out of the bullpen, and if I'm on, I'm going with my fastball, maybe a little bit of a curveball or split here or there. But I didn't start breaking out my other stuff till the second time through the lineup, unless they forced me to change early, or I wasn't really crisp with what I had. I'm attacking. And nowadays you see everybody use 5 pitches on the first hitter of the game. You see all their pitches in the first hitter of the game, and next thing you know, 4 innings, they're at 102 pitches and got to come out of the game.
I will. I want to step back and ask this. Obviously, you, as we talked about earlier, your roots in Boston run deep. What your connection to that baseball community run deep. The number 21 has not been worn in. I guess we're going on about 28 years now. How much would it mean to you to have that kind of that kind of respect formalized? To the idea, how much is the idea of having your 21 put alongside some of those other greats that well? How much would that mean to you if that were ever to happen?
Yeah, it would mean a lot. I mean, it's awesome that Vince, our first clubhouse manager, when I got there, the University of Texas had 21 hanging for me. When I got there from the University of Texas, numbers retired at Texas. We got a couple of cool little sayings. In the pitching lab at Texas, it reads, "My only day off is the day I pitch." and that held true because of the work that was done behind the scenes. And they just hung in the tunnel, so I'm going up to see Coach Sark when they start their practices, but they just hung one of my other ones in the football tunnel. It says tough all day. And but yeah, 21's been great in my family. 22 was another one big number in our family, which I went to for 2 other teams. But to have my number here with Boston, I mean, it's not going to change me as a person either way, but it's really cool that Tommy and all the guys. I think the people that saw the work I put in for 13 years. I think it's really cool that I'm tied with Cy Young in 2 categories. I'm not ahead of him in wins. I'm not below him. So that's just fate that worked out that way, that I'm tied with Cy Young and Red Sox wins and shutouts. And I just think that's the coolest thing. Every time I walk up and see my 7 Cy Youngs, I just am very, very thankful. And there's a lot of sweat and tears in those awards. And to have it, to have Cy Young's name attached with me, it's just cool. So yeah, if they, I don't know who decides that or what. They did the little plaque thing, the Red Sox Hall of Fame deal, and but it would be great. Yeah, I mean, I obviously have to spend some money flying some people up here because they would all want to see it.
I think they'd cover that bill. I'm not sure. I think they can handle that. Listen, Roger, we could go all day. It's great stuff. I really appreciate you coming on. Look, I know you played for the Yankees and the Blue Jays and the Astros, and even if I include the Savannah Bananas, you still played more years with the Red Sox than all those other teams combined. All right, so to us, you're always remember the Red Sox.
I am. This is where I got my start. My big heart is here in Boston, and yes, the Savannah Banana game was out of control, and I had to ice for 3 days straight after that. They thought I was Satchel Paige or something. The guy asked me to pitch, and I said I can throw out a first pitch for you. And he goes, "That would be awesome, but I'd really like you to pitch in the game." And I said, "What's wrong with you? I'm 60 years old. You think I'm Satchel?"
That's all right. You're still a young guy to them. Bill Lee threw a couple of guys the other day at Fenway. All right,
Man,
and he died. He died in the bullpen last year. They had to bring him back to life. All right, so you got some years on that arm. I think you're all right. Roger,
all right,
it's been a blast.
We'll
see you on the golf course. 4 right. Stay on my left if you're anywhere near me. We'll see you up in Falmouth next week, my friend.
Hook 'em.